Salute. This one's tasty. I didn't promote alcohol, but this one's pretty cool. It's Mountain Dew mixed with 5% alcohol. But yeah, it's been one of my go-to drinks lately, especially when I was struggling to sleep, like currently right now. It's already been like almost 2 weeks since I last had a job, I think. Is it 2 weeks? 10 days. I'm not even sure. Probably something around that time period, but I'm still struggling to sleep. I haven't had like an 8 hour sleep in days. No, weeks actually. Now I'm lost. The sole purpose of this one is I'm cracking up a cold one to celebrate what the day has been. It's been a really long day, and especially with the announcement of Yeri and Wendy not renewing their contracts with SM. So that was really conflicting to start the day, and you're trying to try and figure out like, okay, where do they go from here? And they're still Red Velvet, but still, you worry about when will they be together again. But as someone who somewhat went through the same thing with the decisions that I made for the past few months and years, I understand why you had to go for you to find yourself. And it's something that is intriguing, scary, but at the same time, free, freeing of like all the worries, all the questions, because you get to be in the unknown and you get to really see it for yourself where you ought to be, where you're supposed to be. So I'm just glad that they took the risk, and all I could really think of is that it's for them. It's not selfish because it's for them to not only take care of themselves but to also pursue their dreams. So cheers to those two. Red Velvet forever, man. It's all five, no matter what. And in the sense of that too, I finally heard some good news. Um, wherein I'm one step away to my next destination. So I've been jobless for, like I said, a week and a half probably, but I've been working on this particular thing for months. So one good news earlier, so I'm hoping for the next one. So I'm yet to share it because I've been making some things in line with it also. I'm still struggling to speak, but at the same time, it's a good thing because I get to somewhat open up differently this time around. I've been making videos for a while now. It's close to a year. I think I started in July. It's already April, and I've been doing a lot of things that are intriguing to myself, freeing also at the same time. Is there a word like freeing in that sense or an adjective? I don't think so, but that's one of the things that I've been learning or I have been struggling with is with the words that I've been using, the sentences that I've been constructing, and at the same time with how I put out my art in general to somewhat cater to a wider or bigger audience. It's something that I have to deal with, have to open up with. At the same time, just a few minutes ago, I reached a milestone 10,000 likes after posting 1,000 videos. So it's pretty funny, yeah, but I wrote like a piece about it, a journal maybe, stating how that may have been easy for most. Like in one video, they can get that. But for me, it took me a while. But it's not about how long it took me, it's about how much I worked to get that. And I earned that through all the art and all the insanity that I've been doing. So I'm really proud of myself for just pushing through no matter how stupid it got, no matter how confusing it got, no matter how maddening it got. It all happened for a reason. And so here's to young Elray, which was probably 8 months ago, I think back in August, who was just like, man, I should do something with my life. So I decided to start writing every day once again because it's something that I've been married to when I was like 12, but I had to stop due to exhaustion and burnout. But I got to return to writing poems again I know it's a bit of like a 10 to 15-minute writing session, but to get that exercise every day is something that I'm really thankful for because it get me to this point that I'm excited to actually write longer, like an hour or so. So I'll have those writing sessions in the future. At the same time, I decided to also start sketching every day back in August. And now I've been doing it in such a different way that I get somewhat venture on making more things about it, which is really cool to see how I improve from start to finish. Something that I'm really proud of. And at the same time, I also worked on the dance, as a joke. And it will make sense in the future as to why I'm doing it. I don't want to break character about that. And then at the same time, I started journaling every day again. I know sometimes I cheat, like write 2 journals per day, but it's because of being disoriented with my time zones from my previous work. But now I find myself in a particular space wherein I'm just grateful for this break. I know I don't have any money and I don't want to be a burden to my family, so I have to start working on more things as soon as I can, and I'm not pressuring myself like I used to. And the reason why I'm opening up with those things is because I've been looking for different ways to really pursue art, not necessarily removing myself from it, but instead finding more ways to connect, because that's the part that I have to do now. Because in the beginning, it was more about learning for myself and searching the right way to do it. And now I get to have these interactions online, and like those comments really mean a lot to me. Like those advice of like, yo, you can do better here, there. I like this one. That one didn't work. Those things. If that was my young self, I would probably be more insecure. But this time around, it opens me to vulnerability and at the same time to art itself, and it's really something that I've been really grateful for. And I know it's been like a hit and miss, flop most of the time, but when something hits, even with the limited amount of people who sees it, imagine that. I remember seeing a post like 300 people saw that and 20 people liked it. That's 20 different people that some of them you probably will never meet. Imagine how much art can reach if you just keep pushing with that. So that's the beauty of it. So I'm enjoying the journey, not necessarily the destination. So it's a good thing that I have that. And in terms of that in particular, I am still struggling with speaking, especially now. I have like, I don't know the English term for it, but uh, meron akong singaw. So it's a struggle to speak. And I have to practice my Tagalog also because I cannot wait to write things in Tagalog. And I have a lot of ideas that I have to put in there. And English is basically my way to somewhat reach out and at the same time practice. As you can hear, when I said English earlier, it sounded different because of how I have to somewhat practice again speaking because I have not done it in a while and the grammar is not grammaring correctly. You know, it's just kind of like a different vibe this time, a much lighter one. Not necessarily that serious because the thing that I really want to talk about took me 9 minutes to do so. But before that, cheers to the yapping. If you want to do something in art, you don't have to worry about it. Just do it. Whether it's art, if it's something that you used to do, something you wanted to try, just do it. Don't don't worry about how people will look at you, especially in the beginning. Everyone will fail. You will not get it in the beginning. If you do, you just got lucky. Do it the next day. It will not be the same. So just keep doing it. And once your lucky strikes, when you're lucky like that, just seize it, just seize it, just seize it, make something out of it. Just keep pushing. And I tried that really hard for this particular story that I wish to tell. I'm sorry, it took me 10 minutes. So I've pointed out how much I appreciate and enjoy the journey instead of the destination. So I finally took a journey where I returned to a particular novel or a book or whatever this hell is, and finally read it once again. Probably like 8 years later. Yeah, I think it's been 8 years since the last time that I held this book. This is Dante's Divine Comedy, first chapter, which is Hell. And I'm not lying when I say this. This book is hell. It was a struggle to read this. I remember reading this when I was in college back in 2018. So I was probably 19 at that time. And the reason why I'm saying the years correctly is because I left some receipts when I was in college. This one is from a coffee shop back in June 18, 2019. It's like second chapter. I still have an old one here stating 2000, early 2018, I think, or 2019. Maybe I got the year wrong. But the point is, I tried to read this when I was a teenager, and it didn't work out because the language of this particular version of the book is difficult to read. And I'm not dissing the one that made this translation. It's just really difficult. But at the same time, it's poetic, which is the idea in the first place, because define, I was supposed to say divine, but I said define, I'm sorry. But the Divine Comedy is written through poetry. So we have to thank Dante for that. And as a poet, he wrote this, of course, in his native tongue, which is Italian. Is that correct? Yes, in Italian language. Um, and it isn't easy to read, especially with the version that I got here. I'm saying that again with all due respect because the work that was done here, not only was it translated, but notes were included where it's actually much easier to understand. So it's kind of like if you're not into the poetry, you can just read the opening paragraph and then the notes, but it will not make the story make sense a lot. So the thing about this particular concept or story about hell, in particular, as the first chapter, Divine Comedy, I find myself reading it once again because I feel like I'm 25. Maybe I'll understand this better. So, wait, I'll just have to drink to that. The funny thing is, I couldn't be any more wrong. Like, it wasn't easy, but this time around, I got to rest and somewhat understand it better compared to when I was young. I had to take note because I don't really annotate on the books. I don't know, out of respect. I have that weird relationship with books where I do not like to annotate on them. So I just kept on just reading and just giving myself a pause to read it once again and understand what it's trying to imply. And I'm yapping already about how the book is written. I'm so sorry, but what really makes me appreciate this story is how it's not necessarily about the destination for the meantime. It's more about the journey. So this particular chapter, which is Hell, tells the story of our protagonist, which is I forgot his name already. It's how forgetful I am. But the idea is this particular character is a version or a mask of Dante. So instead of Dante, we are following the protagonist. Actually, it's Dante. It's Dante finds himself. Yeah, it's Dante. Now, again, this is basically what I'm saying is this particular part of this video is about me explaining how I understood the Divine Comedy, Chapter 1 Hell, just for dummies like me. So we follow Dante being guided by Virgil in his journey to hell. And that's it. I'm not lying. That's the story. And it's kind of intriguing with how this particular story was made. And for those who have yet to read this, I highly suggest that if you're interested in history, go read that too. Go read the history amongst characters of that particular era. So Dante was born back in 1265 until 1321. So most of the characters that are included here are actual human beings. Most of them tyrants, leaders. Some of them also are part of other literature like Greek or what other literature are that time? I forgot. But the point is, a lot of characters in here that Dante and Virgil got to meet through their journey in hell are characters that not everyone may be familiar with. So it's important to take note that a lot of the references here in the Divine Comedy is around that time and who are the prominent figures and why are they there. Like, what are the things that they've done in particular. So, in this story, in sense, when I read this again, I am not well versed in terms of history. I have to admit that, but I am somewhat a casual listener and reader in terms of these particular concepts. So I got to somewhat understand it. Again, it's not a necessity, but it would really help you a lot to somewhat understand as to why this particular stanza or rhymes are intended for that character. Why are they being introduced in this part? So in this journey in particular in hell, so it's basically something like this. I love that they have this kind of images or sketches of how it looks like, and at the same time, not only does it help you visualize, but when it reached the part wherein they're describing how it looks like, that's the part that I really like the most. Even though it's still running circles in terms of poetry or words that were used in the translation, I was able to appreciate it and somewhat immerse myself because in the beginning I was trying to make sense of a story, but this time around I go back to those things that I learned when I was young, like back in history lessons. Like writing is something that is already a thing back in those days, but it's not really writing that was being practiced as the means to tell stories. It was through poetry, symposiums. I remember reading, I have that book still, which is something that I will read in the future. It's The Great Dialogues of Plato. That particular book have different stories in line with Plato's experiences, and they're basically telling stories with one another. And that's how this particular book is presented. If I'm not mistaken, in the Philippines in particular, one of the practices that they've been doing is to tell stories and to pass it on. It's one of, I mean, it's not just the Philippines, but that's something that is actually part of the culture. That's why poetry is important in the Philippines, as it is in the whole world. They had their ways of telling stories and passing it on, and that became like something that even us, like that's what your great great grandfather told us and all those kind of things. It's how we pass on culture. So that's how this particular thing worked also, with all the stories that were being passed on and through the poetry that they have written here to somewhat introduce the different deadly sins. It's something that I'm really really interested in. So you got to not only immerse yourself with what these circles mean, what these sins, I can't even pronounce it correctly, sins are, it's for, or whatever it may be, like what is gluttony and how it is shown. And I love the beauty of this. I said love and then beauty. I love that it shows through poetry what gluttony can be, not just in a poetic manner, in a metaphoric manner, but also how it looks like, how ugly it can be, how demented it can be, how different it can be. So basically, this entire story for Hell is just Dante and Virgil having like a walkthrough with different cast and characters from one sin or one circle to another, and they get to meet all of these people, prominent figures, and also monsters. And it's not necessarily termed as monsters, but souls that were cursed to be transformed in a particular way. I think it's by the end of the story, I forgot which canto that was, but there was a part in there wherein they tell this. interaction where they got to see like souls transforming into figures that are hard to understand. In layman's terms, it's kind of like Devilman, Crybaby kind of vibe, where there's no Raven Hell. I'm sorry, there's no Raven Hell here. It's just, and then there's no like burning in fire and flames or whatever. The idea of hell here is them just struggling and circling around with their sins, and they're not necessarily repenting, but suffering through that. And with these particular characters transforming into the physical manifestation of their sins is something gruesome, but with the way that it was written poetically is interesting. So I'm sorry if I'm wording it that way. Again, this is the Divine Comedy for Dummies. So the thing here is that it's fascinating and intriguing to read a character, which is the writer in a way, and being somewhat not necessarily welcomed, but guided to hell. I do not know what Dante hit back in that particular period of time. Must be the good, the fine shit, probably, because this is really crazy and everywhere. And basically, the journey, he even met Satan himself. And it's not necessarily like a meetup like hi hello Satan, but oh yeah, that's Satan's the biggest like monster in this particular thing. Or is it? That's one of my favorite parts too. But it's just there's nothing happening here actually. I'm sorry. It sounds like I'm degrading the book, but no. This is the part that I like. This is the image that they made here. So they showed here like the biggest demon of all time. Of course, there's a different name for him. So to put this into perspective for dummies like me, the Divine Comedy, which is hell, basically we watch or we read through Dante and Virgil going through hell. And how it happened is Dante is still alive. It's not dead. So it's like different compared to those that they got to meet because all of those are souls. And similar with Virgil. So it's only Dante who got to somewhat have a run through hell as a human being, as a person that's still alive. And basically they had to go through the center of the earth. So they started from the earth, going through the ground, magical portal, some shit, and then they got to go down deeper. And when they were about to reach the very center of the earth or the core, which is technically scientifically speaking the hardest part of the thing, he got to meet Satan. And I love that there was a part here in this book where it told that there are parts of hell that is cold as hell because it's not really in the stigma that hell should be flaming hot all the time. So I really love the explanation for that part. But the idea here that I really love the most is that it's a spoiler, but again, it's for dummies like me. So you can try and read it for your own interpretation. But basically, he just journeyed through all the circles of hell, saw seven deadly sins or other sins and their physical manifestation, and tried to understand it metaphorically and spiritually, and understand it through different prominent figures so that they can see both the good and the bad and the evil and these particular people. And then when he got to the end part, instead of being scorched into flames, the world turned upside down when he reached the core, and it led him upwards, now in the journey to purgatory, which is a mountain. So he went from going down to climbing upwards. So it's a really fascinating way of interpreting how life and death works. And with the Divine Comedy, which is, from what I read, the original title is just comedy, I think, or hell. Particularly, the divine part was just added afterwards. But the thing about this is, especially for those who love poetry and are open-minded to reading such a thing, because I am a believer, I'm a Catholic, but Catholic, I hate you, Daredevil. But the point is, I'm not afraid to read things like this because it's an interesting piece of literature, and especially for its time, it's really groundbreaking. Until now, I think there are a lot of things that you can still digest in this one. It is something that you can read in different moments in your life, and you get to see something different in it all the time. As someone who always tried different things, I was open to mistakes, and some of them I had to be dumb enough to get lost in and go through that particular hell. But I always remember this particular line. I think from an Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels match. I think it's WrestleMania 25. That's really say it's something like it's always hell trying to get to heaven. So the idea here is before Dante could reach Paradiso, paradise, he has to go through hell, and in the middle of it is the purgatory. And it's just basically like a body cop comedy. I think that's a way that you can interpret this particular novel. It's not perfect, but with its imperfections, you get to see your imperfections as a human being. There's a reason why this particular poetry book or novel is still revered to up to this day, and why it inspired different pieces of art, whether through writing or through painting, sketches, or whatever, because of how fascinating the world building is. Again, there's no story in here, like you don't get to read character development yet for this chapter in hell. But the way that they build up what they see and those things that they have to somewhat interact with in this journey is something worth reading, and something that is really, really intriguing to read. You can study this one. It will be lovely to do that when you really have the time to do so. So it's not a long read. You can read this in a day. It's just heavy because again you have to somewhat take your time to somewhat understand some parts of it. I'm now reading Purgatorio from a different book because I bought this when I was 19 or 18, and I bought that when I was like around 21 or 22. So it's a different version because I just found this in a book sale. I bought it also in a book sale, but different version. So I'm speaking about this one. So you can see that this is my hell and this is my purgatorio. This one is an easier read, this version, by Alan Mandelbaum. Yeah, I've been reading this one. Less notes here, but much easier to read in terms of translation. Here is difficult to read, but a lot of notes. So I think either way depends upon your preference. It's a good thing to have this kind of literature available because you get to somewhat immerse yourself not only with like your fate, but at the same time with the beauty of poetry and how it can paint stories and images that not necessarily is one of one. You can have your own interpretation of it, and that's the beauty of literature, of books, and of poetry in itself. So yeah, cheers to that. And it's kind of comedic that I had to explain that halfway asleep, halfway drunk at the same time. I only drink one bottle like per week or something, and that gets me drunk. That's how old I am now. I'm 25, but I don't have the tolerance that I used to have, and I'm glad about it too. But the thing is, keep reading, keep doing what you love, and I will read Purgatorio, and I hope I can give a better explanation. So I'll take you guys through this journey with me. I am somewhat 30% done, so I cannot wait to finish it. I'm actually enjoying this time around because I know the characters and I get it better here, but still not fully so. Yeah, that's it for this one. Kind of chaotic, kind of everywhere, but that's the point of it. It's just a buffer until I get to figure out what I really want to do because I still am kind of figuring it out. Anyway, peace out. Respect. No editing for this one. We'll keep it pure.